Hello, Livermore. Good afternoon. I'm from Texas, so I've got to be loud. So, I'm here to talk about disrupting education, but before I start, my background was first disrupting banking, then disrupting government, then disrupting private companies. And now we're starting to get into education, and why not the whole world? I'm very passionate about challenging the status quo. I think the TEDx organizers could probably attest to that. Disruption is a positive thing, and what I want to lead us on today is showing the power of disruption and what's happening in the world that's out there. Our world is inevitably changing every day, and I want to take you on a journey through that. So why? Why is this world changing? What's so different about today than yesterday? The stage is set. A few years ago, a colleague of mine by the name of Dan Charbonneau set out on identifying the three major drivers of change in the world. First one being hyperconnectivity. There's 2.4 billion people connected to the internet. That's amazing to think. The world is hyper-connected and it's very hyper-local. Critical mass. This one's very easy to test. How many of you in here have a cell phone? Raise your hand. That's right. So that's critical mass. That means that we have the majority of our population that's actually connected to the web. That's a lot of devices. That's a lot of people that are doing things with those devices. And the last driver is what we're doing. We're creating. We're uploading 30 hours of video to YouTube every minute. What you see on the screen right now is what happens in an internet minute. So every 60 seconds, that's all the activity that happens. We're no longer sitting back and consuming. We're creating. We're creators, and we've been doing it for years. Now this is where we'll start to get into what's the impact? What's changing in the world? The first trend, BYOD. People are bringing devices onto networks when they're not supposed to. We set up corporate infrastructures to forbid people from bringing devices in. We set up classrooms to take up devices and charge students to get their devices back. But people are bringing them in. They're using these devices. And in fact, you're seeing people convert from the BlackBerry that your corporation gives you to the iPhone they use for their personal home. And the other thing that's really powerful about this trend is that people have better access on their own personal devices and networks than they do at work. They're using the internet at their house because the speed's quicker, because they have better bandwidth allocation. They're creation machines. And at the device level, they're using their device. We all have them in here. We're taking them everywhere with us, and we're snapping photos, and we're tweeting, and we're creating lots of activity. But it's all on our device. Next thing, rapid innovation. This is one of my passions. When you look at the pace of change and innovation, it's fundamentally shifting. Before, if I had an idea for a product, I would go to a bank or I'd go to a venture capital firm, and I would pitch it. And if I was turned down, well, then I was out of luck. I'd have to take some people to some expensive dinners and try to build these relationships up. Well, that's shifting as well. What you see on the screen is Kickstarter, which is a crowdsourced platform for funding ideas and products. And the watch that was on there was actually turned down by VCs and banks. They didn't think it was a good idea. They said, nah, the market doesn't need this. And so the creators of the Pebble Watch went to the crowd. They went to the people. They went to the internet. And they said, we have a device that we think solves a problem. And they put it up. They were seeking to raise $100,000 and make their device and get it in the market. They raised $10 million. In fact, they raised over $10 million in 30 days, all using the internet. Now, the bankers and the VCs said it wasn't going to work. But the internet is a powerful place. Crowds are very powerful places, and they're disrupting the very hierarchical organizations of banks and the way that we conduct business in the past. No longer is it about submitting a business plan that's, this thick, right? A Bible. We give them the business plan, tells them how we're going to make all the money, and then it changes a million times. That's about quick change, rapid change, exponential change. New forms of creation. Outside, you saw some of the 3D printers that were printing some amazing bust, and in fact, I heard that I'm going to have one on my head at some point, which I will gladly not put on my shelf. So, new forms of creation. This is a 3D printed bike. It's the world's first 3D printed bike. It's amazing to think that this technology is now accessible for all of us. We can afford a 3D printer at home, and we can start to 3D print creations. I've tested out some of my own creations, and aside from printing chess pieces, I'm starting to get a little bit better, and I'm starting to grow into other things. But this is shifting the way that we manufacture. In fact, the next industrial revolution is expected to be because of 3D printers. Everybody can have them in their home. If you're a small business, you can now rapidly prototype. You can create something on the fly, and you don't have to be an expert. In fact, my first creations, I just went to the internet and I downloaded other people's creations and I printed them. It's accessible, it's there, it's changing the way that we communicate our ideas. No longer is it about, I have an idea, I'm going to make a business plan, I'm going to do all this. I can actually print the idea, and that's powerful. Of course, new forms of interaction. I mentioned disrupting government. This is what's called Nation Builder. It's a platform to allow people to poke their politicians to a certain extent. It allows people to submit ideas to keep up with what's going on. But before, think about the political process. It was very difficult to keep up with what was going on. Normally, we found out about a new law when we got issued a citation for it, right? So that's changing. We're now able to see what's going on in Congress. We're able to raise our voices up beforehand and actually disrupt that process. And that's fascinating to think about. Power of the people. It's a democratized system, and we're able to use the internet to participate in that process. The rise of gamification. Now, this doesn't mean that we have an increased amount of games on our iPhones. That's another trend itself. This is that we use game mechanics, we use behavioral science to make complex processes fun. We look at breaking down all of these complexities that are out there, and we look at incentivizing them, making them fun. If you take the Angry Birds game, there's a lot of psychology behind how they do it. You reach a hard level, all of a sudden it gets easier. These are hooks that are built into the system. And imagine applying those same hooks into an education process, making it fun for students, making it engaging, making it something that they want to do. Work doesn't always have to feel like work. That's the great thing about startups. We create some amazing innovations, and we have fun doing it. Why can't that same process exist in the classroom? Why can't the classroom be the next startup? Which takes us to crowdsourcing. And this is one of the areas I'm the most passionate about. So outsourcing is taking tasks and outsourcing them to a disparate group of individuals. Crowdsourcing is taking tasks and letting people online, letting the crowd complete these. Now, the first example of that is Wikipedia. Microsoft tried to create an encyclopedia that was online called Encarta. How many of you use Encarta today? All right, we got one. Wikipedia is the default for our knowledge that we search. We go to Wikipedia. It wasn't created by a bunch of experts. It was created by people online. It was created by the crowd. And it was built in rapid time. And it disrupted Encarta. It disrupted the command and control hiring of experts to administer a system and go about it the normal bureaucratic way. It changed all of that. We built a system online. So then I said, well, if Wikipedia could change our access to knowledge, what could we do in government? And I created this site called Manor Labs. And Manor Labs was one of the first experiments in asking citizens what we should do better. And we put all the problems that we had in our city online, and we said, what can we do better? How do we solve these? Help us do this. And the amazing thing is, they helped us solve them. They had great ideas, they had great solutions for problems that plagued us. We could have hired a high-dollar third-party consultant like most cities, but we went to our crowd, we went to our citizens. And then the thought was, well, how does that apply to education? And that's where we have the rise of a new crowd. All the crowds that I've mentioned are the same. They're people. They're humans. And whether you're a government expert, whether you're an education expert, a teacher, or a student, you have the potential to share some pretty powerful things and to do some powerful things. This is Justin. Justin created a submarine. He's a teenager. He built a submarine on the side, outside of school, and it works. I don't know if I would go in it, but it works. This is Brittany. Brittany created an algorithm to diagnose leukemia. She created a way using a computer to diagnose leukemia, an advanced formula. Brittany is also a teenager, and she's in high school. This is Esha. You're going to love this one. This is my favorite. That little device right there is a way to charge your cell phone in 20 seconds. 20 seconds, from 0 to 100%. She is also a teenager. Now, when you go and look up these articles after this, the media is going to label these three individuals as people that are not normal. They're going to say that these three individuals are abnormal, they're geniuses, which they are, and that they did some cool things on the side, and they're going to go to a nice, good school and a good scholarship. My argument is that these three broke through the system. These three individuals are creators, and they found a way, whether it's through a mentor, a teacher, they found a way to follow their passion. And they created something that was world-changing out of it. They created something that we're all going to use. and they broke through the constraints that we put on them within a typical education-based system. So now what's disruptive about all of this? Well, we're moving from a consumption-based learning model, so a teacher lecturing to students. We've gone from that to now I can consume online, and I can consume from my pocket, and I can consume on my iPad. It's still consumption. We're still fundamentally not shifting the way that we teach, because now I'm just doing it on a very expensive device, right? But now we're switching to creation, and this is where the magic happens. When students are allowed to create, and they're allowed to tackle real things, they get engaged. We learned at Cloud Lab, we bought a tour bus, we went into classrooms across California, and we found that kids are hungry to create, and they're constantly looking for new ways to do it. Kids would stay up all night to write songs and come in and rap about it. But they didn't have access to the tools, and they weren't in an environment that allowed them to do that. And so this is where we see is the fundamental shift that's needed in education. We need to build more tools. We need to let go of the constraints and let them do more to create. So now how do we do it? Well, the first one, there's a lot of fear associated with trying something new. But this is a shared experience. We're doing this with students. We're involving them in the process. We're leveraging them and their expertise, and we're pairing that with the expertise of teachers. As Sir Ken said earlier in the presentation, teachers have a pivotal role in the process. We're just creating this new experience together, and we're using the expertise of those students. Solve real-world problems. Instead of solving hypothetical textbook-based problems, we need to match the resources that we have with our students to problems that exist in their local neighborhoods. When I was in school, I sold candy bars to raise money, right? That was the thing that we did. And today, kids are still doing the same thing, except it may not be candy bars. It may be like some organic, healthy thing, right? This is changing. Kids are hackers now. They're able to do some amazing things. They're able to create, and they can build websites. So why not pair those skills to real-world problems? They could build a nonprofit website for their community. Asking them to fix the system. The funny thing is, when you ask a crowd what's wrong, they're going to tell you what's wrong. And why not ask teachers? Why not ask students to tell us ways that they learn better? They're creating and learning on their own. Why not ask them how we take that and bring it into the education system? Be ready to adapt. The world is always changing. I shared a lot of different technologies with you. The world is continually changing at an exponential pace. And we need to be ready for a disruption, and we need to continue to build that shared experience with our students so that instead of being surprised, we're in the journey together. And lastly, what I want to leave you with is that there's amazing possibilities when you work with students, when you work to solve real-world problems, when you use crowds of individuals to tackle some of society's greatest problems. You don't have to be an expert, you don't have to have a master's degree in it, but you can do some amazing things when you just try. And I encourage you all to try something new. Experiment where you're at, whether you're in a company, whether you're in a classroom, experiment, take a step forward. Don't live by someone else's vision for how the system's supposed to work. You need to continually challenge the system and try new things, and we'll all learn together as a part of that experience. Thank you.